Hello everyone. In this video we are going to discuss about instruction level parallelism and what are all the methods adopted to implement parallelism among instructions. This is the pipelined instruction stages. Parallelism among instructions can be achieved by overlapping the pipeline stages. By doing so, many instructions can be launched in every clock cycle, thereby processor's performance will improve. There are two different methods to increase the instruction level parallelism. First one is increase the depth of the pipeline to overlap more instructions. Second one is by replicating the internal components of computer. So by replicating the internal components, so we can able to launch multiple instruction in every pipelining stages. This concept is known as multiple issue. There are two major ways to implement multiple issue processor. First one is static multiple issue processor. So in static multiple issue processor, all the decisions are done by the compiler even before execution. So this decision includes what are all the instruction to be fetched. So in what way they have to be executed. All these decisions are done by the compiler. Second one is dynamic multiple issue processor. So from the name itself, all the decisions are done during execution. That's why the name dynamic. All the decisions are done by the processor. So there are two primary and distinct responsibilities that must be dealt within the multiple issue pipeline. First one is packaging of instructions. So what are all the instructions has to be fetched in that particular clock cycle will be packed in a single instruction format, and that will be loaded into the issue slot. Second one is even though we are utilizing the advantage of pipelining, all the problems associated with the pipelining will be available in instruction level parallelism. So we need to have a mechanism to deal with data hazard as well as control hazard. We don't need to bother about structural hazard. So speculation is the method adopted by the static as well as dynamic issue processor. In static issue processor, the speculation is done even before execution. In dynamic multiple issue processor, the speculation is done during runtime. Speculation means prediction. So the processor or compiler will be predicting about the properties of the instruction. So it can able to enable execution to begin for other instruction that may depend on speculated instructions. So the main purpose of these speculations to overcome data hazard as well as control hazard. So in static multiple issue processor, the speculation is done before execution. In dynamic multiple issue processor, the speculation is done during execution. Speculation is done by means of two methods. One is software speculation. Software speculation is done by the compiler. Here compiler usually inserts some additional instructions. These instructions will be making a track of whether the speculation is going in a correct way or not. The accuracy of the speculation is checked by these additional instructions so that there won't be any hazards occurring. So hardware speculation is done by the processor at the time of execution. Here processor will be having some speculative buffers. So even before the result getting saved inside the register, the speculative buffer will be loaded with this result. If the speculation is correct, then only the results will be transferred to the registers. First one, static multiple issue processor. Here packaging of instruction is done with the help of compiler. So issue slots are the memory location which hold the combined instruction that has to be fetched in a single clock cycle. So issue packets are the set of instruction decided by the compiler. So that has to be fetched together in single clock cycle. So very long instruction word is the architecture followed by the static multiple issue processor. Here multiple instruction will be loaded into in a single instruction word. So in a single clock cycle all the instructions will be fetched and it will be executed. So for example, in a static two issue processor, the issue packet will be containing two different instructions. So in a single clock cycle, two different instructions will be fetched. The type of instruction should be in this format. The first instruction must be an ALU or branch instruction. The second instruction must be a load or store instruction. So this scheme or this instruction type is made must because it should overcome the control hazard as well as um, data hazard. So if any instruction is don't having a pair to combine, at that time no operation will be inserted inside the compiler. So this is the way static two issue processor is implemented in a data path. So in order to execute two different instructions parallelly, so we need to have some extra hardware unit. We need only one instruction memory, so that in a single we are following VLIW architecture that will be present in the instruction memory. So in a single clock cycle we can able to fetch two different instructions, and it will be decoded, and we will be having extra buses for accessing extra registers. One sign extension is used in case of branch instruction. One sign extension is used for parallelly operating the load or store instructions. So here we have two different ALUs will be working in the third clock cycle. So first ALU will be doing normal operation with respect to an ALU instruction or a branch instruction. The second ALU will be operating to calculate the address in case of store or store word or load word instruction. So by implementing multiple hardwares, we can able to overcome structural hazard in case of static two issue data path. Code scheduling. So code scheduling must done by the compiler before execution in order to overcome the dependencies between the instruction. For example, in this program we have dependencies between first three instructions on register T0, and third and fourth instruction having dependencies on S1. So during scheduling, the compiler will allow the first instruction to fetch in the first clock cycle. Since my fourth instruction has no dependencies between first three instruction, so compiler will allow the fourth instruction to fetch in the second clock cycle, and second instruction will be fetched in the third clock cycle. In case of two issue scheduling cases, one instruction can be a branch instruction and the second instruction can be a store instruction. So in the fourth clock cycle, the issue packet will contain in the normal execution third and fifth instruction will be fetched in the fourth clock cycle as a single issue packet in case of this example. So this is the way by adopting scheduling mechanism, compiler will be overcoming data hazard as well as control hazard. Loop unrolling is the another approach adopted by the compiler in order to reduce the strength of the loop. For example, in this loop, we need to calculate four different values for y. So each value computation takes one clock cycle each. So for this entire program, four clock cycle will be taken. So in order to reduce the strength of this loop, the code is rescheduled or loop unrolled by the compiler like this. So when I equal to 0, y of 0 and y of 2 will be computed. When I equal to 1, y of 1 and y of 3 will be computed. So here only two clock cycles are utilized compared to the previous one. So 50% of the strength of this loop is reduced by the compiler. Another example, here 100 clock cycles are required for calculating 100 different values of y. So this can be strength reduced like this. So when I equal to 0, y of 0, y of 25, y of 50 and y of 75 will be computed. When I equal to 1, y of 1, y of 26, y of 51 and y of 76 will be computed. Here 75% of the strength getting reduced by loop unrolling by the compiler. Register renaming is the another mechanism used by the compiler in order to overcome output dependency as well as anti-name dependency. True name dependency can be overcome only by adopting forwarding mechanism or instruction reordering. But we can able to overcome anti-name dependency or output name dependency by doing only register renaming. So this is done by compiler during scheduling. So while loop unrolling or scheduling, so we need to overcome anti-name dependency as well as output name dependency by register renaming. So here, so by doing register renaming, we can't able to overcome a true dependency. We can able to overcome only anti-name dependency as well as output dependency. So consider this example. So here we have true dependencies between these R1 registers and a true dependency between R4 register and a true dependency between R1 register which is available in third and fourth instruction. And we have anti-name dependencies between R3 and R1. We have output dependency between R1. So this can be overcome by the compiler by adopting register renaming. So while doing register renaming, compiler has to modify some register which should not have any true dependency between previous instruction. So consider in this case R3. R3 has output dependency, anti-name dependency between third and first instruction. So by register renaming this R3 by R8, we can able to avoid anti-name dependency from first and third instruction. Then by renaming the register R1 which is present in third and fourth instruction, we can able to overcome both output dependency between first and third instruction as well as anti-name dependency between second and third instruction. So this is the way compiler will be doing register renaming to overcome anti-dependency as well as anti-name dependency as well as output dependency. Dynamic multiple issue processor, otherwise known as superscalar processor or simply superscalar. So this is an advanced pipelining technique that enables the processor to execute more than one instruction per clock cycle during execution. So during runtime only the decision is taken by the processor how to which instruction has to be fetched in particular clock cycle. But with the help of processor alone, the system cannot achieve this dynamic multiple issue processing. So we have to seek the help of compiler also. So compiler will be helping the thing which has to be done before execution, that is the register renaming, then loop unrolling, strength reduction, and overcoming data hazard as well as control hazard. Even before execution, compiler will be taking care of those things. The scheduling will be done by the processor. So which instruction has to be fetched at what clock cycle, that will be taken care by the processor. Dependencies will be removed with the help of compiler. So dynamic pipelining scheduling, here the reordering of the code or reordering of the instruction is done by means of hardware to overcome pipelining stall or hazard. So dynamic pipelining chooses which instruction to execute in a given clock cycle while trying to avoid hazards and stall. This is happening during runtime. So consider this particular example. Here first and second instruction is having a data dependency on register T0. So in the normal pipelining stages, the third instruction has to wait for the computation of this first instruction. Then only the third instruction will be fetched. But the third instruction is completely independent of first two instruction. So in order to overcome the waiting delay of the third instruction, we can able to do instruction reordering. So first instruction can be fetched, third instruction can be fetched as a first instruction, so that the waiting cycles of the first instruction can be avoided. So this is done during runtime. So dynamic pipelining scheduling chooses which instruction to be executed next, possibly reordering them to avoid stall. So in such process, pipelining is divided into three major units. First one is instruction fetch and instruction issue unit. Second one is multiple functional units. Third one is a commit unit. The first unit is used to fetch the instruction in the same order given by the designer. That's why in order issue is mentioned here. The first unit is going to um, fetch the instruction in order, and it is going to decode. The decoded operands as well as operations will be loaded into this reservation station. Each functional unit will be having this buffer. The name of this buffer is the reservation station. The reservation station is going to hold the operands as well as operation decoded by the instruction fetch as well as decoder unit. So once the data, all the operands available for operating that has loaded already to the reservation station, then the functional unit will be performing over that particular instruction with respect to that operation. So if the decoded instruction is an integer instruction, that will be forwarded to the integer functional unit. If it is a floating point instruction, that will be forwarded to floating point functional unit. So we will be having different functional unit. So according to the instruction, out of order execution will be happening inside this functional unit, because we need to overcome data hazard as well as control hazard. During execution, processor will decide which instruction to be executed at what time by doing out of order execution. Instruction won't be executed in the same order it got fetched. So that will be done by out of order execution in order to overcome data hazard as well as control hazard. Once the result is obtained, that will be loaded to a buffer which is available in the commit unit. So the buffer will be waiting for the decision by the processor whether the speculation goes in the correct way or not. So then only once the speculation is correct, the commit unit buffer will be loading the result to the register in the same order which is expected by the programmer. Actually, out of order execution has happened, and the data are loaded in some other order. So but as a programmer point of view, they will be expecting the output in the same order what they have done in the coding. That will be done by the commit unit. So instruction can be executed in a different order, but it will be available for the programmer in the same order what they have entered. And the commit unit is used to avoid incorrect speculation also. So this is the way dynamic pipelining scheduling is happening in the dynamic multiple issue process. Thank you.